Gabe, do you know what's cooler than being cool? I'm not talking about anything podcast related. I'm talking about my new Meta Ray-Bans, which, Gabe, I'm going to take them off for the sake of this podcast here. So hopefully someone was watching that. But after testing the Meta Ray-Bans for the past week with their AI capabilities, I've got to say, man, I'm not a huge Meta fan, but pretty impressed. And Gabe, I do have a referral code if you're ready.
I've seen them around and I've been curious about them. And you told me that you've just been pretty blown away by the functionality. And now I feel like I have to go get a pair. I feel like I'm just accumulating things to put on my body. I have my Apple Watch that we've talked about numerous times. I got my Aura Ring now, and now I'm going to get fancy sunglasses to put on my face also. Did you see the quote from Zuck that anybody who doesn't have Meta Ray-Bans is going to be like woefully behind?
I didn't see that, but I will say this. And if you can't tell, we're going to talk about AI on the podcast today, but I've got to say, like, very impressed. I'll share some of the use cases.
Yeah, you got to tell me. You got to tell some of these stories. You told me a couple, but I need to hear more details about how you're using them.
I've got to say, like, what impresses me here is the fact it's wearable technology, and I think this is a space. I've always said my Apple Watch is my favorite Apple product because it's a very personal device. It's something that's designed very well with the intention that people are going to see it. It's always going to be with you. You can interact with your phone without touching your phone. Well, now I'm walking into the grocery store, talking to a friend on my sunglasses. I don't have AirPods in. I'm not using my watch. I'm just using the wearable, the sunglasses in this case that I'd typically be wearing. And in some of the other use cases, they have cameras on them. So of course, I walk around taking pictures of my hikes and videos on my hikes. But since it's connected to Meta's AI, I started asking it, questions that you would typically ask, things like ChatGPT or Gemini, especially with visual intelligence. So I would say something like, driving down the road, is it safe to pass the car in front of me right now? And it would take a quick picture and it would do like a very quick analysis, very impressed there. And it would come back, say like, oh, I can see you're on a 2-lane highway. There's a car in front of you. There's a car approaching you. Probably not safe. And it walks through this whole, analysis. And then it, of course, gives me the fine print of like, use your best judgment based on what I'm telling you as well.
But Meta told me to pass the car. Why did I get in a head-on car accident? Yeah, no, I'm sure they're going to caveat the crap out of that. But that is interesting.
But so like not an endorsement. I will say, me, Gabe, I love the Apple ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So, your comment about being behind or, not being in with the cool kids if you don't have Meta sunglasses or if you've not used my referral code. I've got to say, like, Apple, where are you at with these things, man? I've got the watch. Where are my sunglasses? So, like I said, I only had them for a week. Very impressed so far. Like I said, I'm not hugely plugged into Facebook. I had to download the Meta AI app, to be honest. I never even used that. But, I am starting to see where all those poached employees have done now.
Yeah, for real. I do want to ask. So one thing that got me curious is you were talking about the processing. So is it connected via Bluetooth to your phone? Is that the connectivity?
Yeah, it does Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. So
there's Wi-Fi too. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And so like when you load content, it'll use Wi-Fi to use those, video and image uploads. Mm-hmm. And then it just passes information right through the Meta AI app. And then you can it's basically like interacting with Siri. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to pause just so I don't set any HomePods off. But it's like interacting with that voice assistant on your AirPods, on your watch, on your iPhone, just through your sunglasses. And when people ask like, oh, what can I do? That's typically the people are familiar with Siri for the most part, but that's the example I give.
Yeah, I think that's a good example. And but like you said, asking it things that you would ask any other LLM is sort of an interesting use case. And the part that really gets me interested is, if with the proliferation of these types of devices and AI at the edge, so to speak, where is this processing actually happening? Is it happening on your phone? Is it happening in the cloud? Like, how is this stuff, we're asking a lot of these devices and a lot of the technology that we're interacting with. The fact that you can just be driving down the road, connected to your phone via Bluetooth, and it's answering questions via AI is kind of insane.
I mentioned walking into the grocery store. This is an actual use case too. First day I had him, I was walking into the grocery store and it was on a phone call on my sunglasses. But I thought this has to look crazy because I'm not holding a phone. I don't have AirPods in. I don't have headphones in. Like it looks like I'm talking to myself out here. But I I was also laughing because I got a Teams message last week and I responded with something like, "Just a second, I'm doing a software update on my sunglasses," and I thought, what planet has that ever been set on?
That's hilarious. Yeah, I never thought we'd be saying software updates on your sunglasses. Well, what's interesting for anybody who missed the first 5 seconds of this episode, they don't look super clunky. Like that is the big difference between everything. Yeah, grab them again, throw them on, dude.
Yeah, like, yeah. Let's do a little show and tell. Well, the funny thing, Gabe, is battery sunglass case. That's where they charge. You see the like
That's
flashing
clever.
there.
Yep.
USB-C, of course. But if you hold these up to just like your normal sunglasses, you wouldn't
They look
really be able
quite
to
similar.
tell.
Well, and
And
that's the
I think
huge difference between that and the Apple products that have come out with the, stupid Vision Pro thing, which is obviously not something that you would wear around on a regular basis.
what it got me thinking too, Gabe, is Facebook in particular has been very focused on like the virtual reality space with the goggles, the headsets. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, no way would I ever do that. But Gabe, I think I mentioned this to you. If not, I meant to text it to you, but I will never buy another pair of non-smart, non-connected, non-AI sunglasses in my life. Like the use case is there. I told you about a month ago. I left my sunglasses on the roof of my car while hiking, and you can imagine where said sunglasses ended up. Big question mark there. But I had to go out and buy new sunglasses, and here I am today with the Meta ones. Again, not an endorsement. Do your own research. Be careful what you put into AI. But I've been very impressed, and I say that as someone who doesn't care much about the Meta AI space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I will also say somebody who is particular about you're particular about your technology. So the fact that you've been pretty impressed with the use cases, even just given a couple of weeks here, I think is telling and speaks to how far this technology has come pretty rapidly.
Gabe, next time I see you, I expect a pair of sunglasses or a pair of just normal glasses as
I
well.
was
They
gonna say
they
maybe I
have
might just have to get the regular ones.
they have a pretty good selection, and like I think I said this before the podcast, Gabe, but I mentioned I almost returned them not because I didn't like them, but because I wanted the transition lens so I could wear them inside. But
Yeah.
I don't need to be that connected. I've already got my watch and my phone, and Gabe, you've got you've got the ring now. So, Meta glasses aside, though,
Yes.
we want to talk a little bit about AI today. And when we talk about AI, we're going to follow up on the conversation from a couple weeks ago where we talked about kind of an introduction to prompting, how to get started with AI. I kind of called that episode like AI 101. Following that episode, I do have to say, last week we dropped kind of a new thing called Ping. It was a episode that was less than 10 minutes, very very fast paced, hyper focused on a specific topic. So if you haven't seen either of those episodes, like I said, Ping is less than 10 minutes. So hopefully you have time for that. But go check both of those out. And of course, stay tuned for the next Ping episode. Topic to be determined. But today, following up on that AI conversation, I want to talk about some of the new AI developments over the past few weeks, and then just a couple statistics with how AI is being used in the workplace. And then finally, I want to talk about the future of prompting and what that means. But talking about just AI news today, the day this podcast was recorded, OpenAI announced that they're going to be sharing two new AI models. The names, which they just sound very robotic, but GPT-OSS-120B and -20B. So different
Terrible name.
models there.
Terrible names.
Oh gosh, they can be run on individual or hardware that your business already owns. There was actually a talking point within the press release about how even some of the Apple Silicon Macs can run these models in an offline state where you may not have internet access.
Hmm.
So I thought that was really interesting. So it's going to be interesting twice in one sentence. It's going to be interesting to see what these offline models can do on these probably lower power GPUs and equipment than compared to what's probably in a data center somewhere. But Gabe, I don't know if you've downloaded them yet, but I know what I'm doing tonight.
I definitely have not, but it is going to be interesting to see what's happening with these. And from a privacy perspective, I can see this being very beneficial for some folks who don't necessarily want to be, just throwing a bunch of stuff into an open LLM, right? Where it's a lot more boxed in. So from that perspective, I think it's going to be a really interesting use case also to see how people use it, with it in that kind of offline mode, as you discussed, Zach.
Yeah, and then the next thing too, this one's been out for a couple weeks, and I was able to test it a little bit, Gabe. I shared some of the findings with you. As marketers, I feel like our use cases might be a little bit more unique, or maybe not as in depth yet as they could be. But let's talk about agent mode,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like this is just going to confuse a lot of people too. But agent mode is different than an agent. So like it's not something that you go out and create your own agent. It's an agent mode that effectively does the work for you. It handles complex tasks from start to finish. And I think there was a comment on the OpenAI website that says that this model shifts between reasoning and actioning, meaning it's going to take your prompt, it's going to process it, it's going to action off it, and then you can continue to prompt the model. And a while back, OpenAI released something called Operator, and this was the ability to interact with websites. And as you know, Gabe, they have deep research, which we should talk about as well, to synthesize information and provide very detailed outputs. So it's kind of bringing these things together along with
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT for that conversational fluency and giving you the ability to navigate websites. It prompts you to log in, which I'm not sure if I would log in with my credentials on Agent yet. It can run code, conduct analysis, even deliver editable slideshows. And one funny thing about that is anyone can tell me I'm wrong listening to this podcast, but I have found AI to be just terrible at creating slideshows or
I have this
PowerPoint
conversation
presentations.
all the time with colleagues. It is, I've been so impressed with so many things in Copilot and some of the analyst functionality and the researcher agents. For whatever reason, it is awful at creating PowerPoint presentations, just
I would
terrible.
I would add charts to that as well. Anytime I
Mm.
use the analyst agent, one thing I always do is for the output, I want, say, the executive summary and I want some charts made. I just say, give me an Excel output with the data so I can just make my own charts. I'll do it myself. It takes 10 seconds. I know what I'm
Yep.
looking for. But again, I feel like we're still early on to critique that. So more to come on that. But
Agreed.
agent mode, Gabe, how have we used it as marketers? Just yesterday, we kind of walked through how it could analyze a buyer flow. So I had agent go to a website and complete the checkout process as if it was a customer buying service. And the cool thing too, Gabe, was I mentioned the kind of the chat GPT conversational fluency. At the
Mm-hmm.
end, I said, okay, how many clicks did this take you? And how many should it take you based off just marketing best practices? And it came back and was like, oh, it took me 16 clicks and it should take 6 to 8 or whatever the number was. And then it gave me through the analysis of that entire process, start to finish, it documented the steps, which I thought was fantastic. And then following that, it gave me the analysis that I asked for my initial prompt, which was I can't recall the exact prompt, it was just to analyze, identify pain points, things that could be improved, things like that. And it did all of that as well. So letting this agent kind of, I don't want to say run free on its own, but go out to the internet, go through a website, input data, act as if it was someone or a customer
Mm-hmm.
was really pretty cool.
It was really cool. And I did a very similar activity for a presentation I needed to make today. And I was pretty blown away with the ability to go kind of end to end and just say, go to this website, here's an address, go through that purchase process. And it's something that I feel like Zach, we talked about this before. I think we did a whole episode on buyer flow and provided some examples and best practices around what we would expect. This is a great way for you to audit your process. And that comment you made around, well, it took 16 clicks and really ideally you'd want it to be 6 to 8. That's a perfect output. The one I did today as well gave me a bunch of recommendations about mobile. And usually what I do when I'm doing these types of analysis, because I actually do them quite frequently, is I go through and I do the analysis, but I do it on my desktop. And I hadn't really considered actually going through and doing it on mobile, and stupid me. But the fact was, is AI did that for me and then pointed out some specific challenges that were going to be related to mobile. Hey, there's going to be a lot of scrolling here, or these images may be hard to see on a mobile device, things like that. So the fact that it did both of those things on the desktop to go through and on a mobile device to go through and analyze both of those in real time, I was really, really impressed with the output that I got. And it saved me a
And
ton of time.
oh, the time savings huge, but also let's take it a step further, Gabe. Okay, cool. You just analyze my own buyer flow, whatever, right? Well, now go and analyze five of my competitors, or one of my big
Yes.
competitors, and identify gaps. What are they doing that I'm not? What am I doing that they're not? How are we different? What's the experience like between these two websites? But having it go that extra step. And again, Gabe, we're marketers. We're talking about agents. Some people may be using it to code or do other things, book
Sure.
vacations. I've seen that example. We used it to make a Facebook ad a week ago. I said, build me a Facebook ad that accomplishes XYZ, runs in this area, and go. And the reason I did this is because Meta Ads Manager can be complicated to a lot of people. It is complicated. So having the agent log into a test Facebook environment I made, again, being careful of what you give as login credentials here,
Yes.
build out that ad based on an image that the AI generated. And again, that just opens up many opportunities by itself. But it
Mm-hmm.
went through step by step, changed the location of the ad, set the budget to what I wanted it to be, configured the creative, and seeing the agent do all of this was just fascinating to see as well.
Yeah, that was a really cool use case. And to go back to something you said there, I agree. Meta Ads Manager can be complicated. And the biggest thing is they change it all the time. So even if you're an expert at it, 6 months ago, a lot of the UI changes on a very regular basis to try and get you to do specific things in your ad setup. So, if you don't necessarily want to stay on top of all of those changes, this is a great way to still leverage it in a really effective way without having to be like deeply knowledgeable about every single button and every single widget and every single knob and dial that you'd want to turn in there.
I feel like it would be good for like process documentation too, of like, go build this ad or go do this thing, document step by step. Cause Gabe, you saw the output of the last one I sent you where it starts like repeating what it says and it includes screenshots. So that could be a great use case as well. But like I said, agent mode, still fairly new. Be careful how you use this and what information you give that, of course. But Gabe, on the topic of using AI though, I came across a statistic this week that I wanted to share with you. And it said that just over half of freelancers report using advanced or expert level AI skills compared to 38% of full-time employees. And I thought that metric was pretty interesting, but it also got me thinking, what is an expert or advanced level AI skill?
I I would just like to call BS on this. Not so much the difference in percentage for freelancers versus full-time employees. I think that is a reality, is that people who are freelancers probably are using AI at a more advanced level and more frequently than people who are, just regular employees at a company. However, this to me screams, I'm a Microsoft Excel expert, right? Like if you looked at everybody's resume, I don't know how many resumes I've looked at over the years, Zach. Probably 1,000 at this point between all of the different jobs that I've been involved with in a hiring process. Everybody says they're a Microsoft Excel expert. You want to know how many of those people were actually Microsoft Excel experts? I probably can't even count them on both of my hands. I am very advanced when it comes to Excel, and I don't even consider myself an expert when it comes to that platform. There is so much in there. I have my things that I'm very good at, and I am definitely in the upper echelon of users, but I don't know that I would even consider myself an expert. So yes, I'm sure more freelancers are using it than full-time employees, but there is no way that 54% of people in the world who are freelancers are expert level AI users.
I I don't want to throw any of my Facebook friends under the bus, but every now and then I'll see like just random people on Facebook. I'm talking about their new projects that are groundbreaking that they do with AI, and I'm like, okay, big question mark on that one. I'm going to keep scrolling here. But to
Uh,
your point, Gabe, the skills and proficiencies on resumes, I feel like everyone's advanced at Microsoft Office, which is, I mean, let's be honest, that's just unfortunate. But I agree with you. I feel like there's no guardrails on what an expert or advanced level is. Um, I'm very good at Excel. I tell people that I know enough to be dangerous, which is underselling myself, but I wouldn't call myself an expert or maybe advanced. I don't know. I don't like labels that much, but totally agree, Gabe. But I also
I would
wonder
say
if
you're
it
advanced, well on your way to expert. But again, I wouldn't even consider myself an expert. Like I don't do VBA code and some of these other things that that would qualify me as technically an expert in Excel. The point for bringing this up, Zach, is there's a lot of discussion about how to use these tools, and there's a lot of bluster about how much people are actually leveraging them. And I think when we look at how people are using it on a day-to-day basis, it's still for very basic prompting. And this sort of leads us into another topic here, but it's summarizing messages. It's doing very basic things that I would not consider expert level or even advanced level use of AI.
And there's kind of two modes of prompting. And I don't want to get too deep into these today because our next subject is actually going to be about the future of prompting. But you've got your mode A, which is good for like summarizing information. I see this one often for taking notes or summarizing an email, summarizing Teams chats. Great, but so what is, very, very elementary introductory to AI. But then you have your mode B, where you can, act as that data analyst, or Gabe, the deep research, work we've been doing, some of these agent modes of testing different things or finding out more information, going beyond simply asking it for information. Type A, I feel like is more of, or mode A is more of a like a Google search almost, like
Mm-hmm.
here's my
It's just an
question, give me an
advanced Google
answer.
search. Yes, exactly. With maybe a little bit more context. Whereas to me, mode B, or what you're talking about there, is I have expertise in a particular area, and I am going to provide that expertise as I'm asking this question. And that to me is where a human and AI piece of this becomes really important. This actually came up in a conversation I was having today. The reason I was able to do, I think, this really good research prompted by a lot of good work that you did. So thank you. I will happily steal great work that you've done, and not totally pass it off as my own, but make sure to give you full credit. But it was bringing the expertise that both of us had to that conversation, and then leveraging that to make a better output. And that to me is the big difference between mode A and mode B that you're talking about there.
And let's kind of go off that and talk about the future of prompting, and let's just throw
Yeah.
it out the window. But as we know, prompting is the language we use to communicate with AI today. It helps us understand how AI responds to different models with reasoning and logic. So I think of it as, prompting teaches us how to work with AI. It's kind of 101, very introductory. Now, why did I just say, well, let's throw prompting out the window? Because, well, let's think about, the future now. Promptless AI. And this is where I think we shift from a reactive mindset to being proactive. Today, I am asking AI for an output. I am asking AI to go to this website. I am asking AI to do this data analysis or to do this work for me. There's a lot of value in that today. But tomorrow, um, with the promptless AI, it's going to act on your behalf based on context and goals. And I think that's kind of the direction, Gabe, that we will see AI evolve. We talked about agent mode today, where AI goes out on the website and does its thing based on your prompt. Well, now
Mm-hmm.
let's think about a promptless version of this.
Yeah, I'll give an example here, and Zach, tell me if this is a good example or a bad example. We didn't prep this, so this is me just going off my, kind of off the cuff here. So we were talking e-commerce buy flow, okay, and talking about how you could go, how we went and asked the AI to go do this analysis. What you're talking about in this promptless world is, let's say you set a threshold for conversion rates. If I have 100 people that come to my website and they enter an address to buy service, I want so many of those to convert over. Maybe it's 80%. Let's just throw out a number here. I want 80% of those. So in this example, 80 people to go through and fill out everything and complete a purchase. Well, I could deploy an agent that says, all right, let me analyze how many of these things are actually happening. And if my conversion rate is not being met, then I want that agent to go and do a full audit of the process and identify the stumbling blocks, much like what we've done just by asking it, but it could go off and do that all on its own. That to me, I think is a really interesting example of where you've set a threshold for a specific business outcome, and then you've deployed AI to measure it and then offer suggestions to make it better to improve those conversions.
I have two things I want to add to that, which first I
Please.
want to go into our next kind of topic, which is, promptless to context aware. It's driven by continuous learning and observation. It's monitoring data. Gabe, we work in broadband, so I'm thinking of like it's monitoring your broadband network and systems, and then it infers and takes action without explicit instruction. Now, example one here I want to talk about, let's talk about Meta again. Gabe, in the past, we've talked about Advantage Plus and what that does in Ads Manager within AI or within Facebook. And what Advantage Plus will do is, I'm thinking specifically of your audience controls, is it can expand your audience, it can optimize your budget, it can also optimize your content and placements, but it's going to optimize it based on the context, based on that learning and that observation. You don't have to prompt it. Now, in the broadband space, this one, it's a bit more difficult, Gabe, for us to use because we typically have fixed regions. If we have a fiber network and we can only sell service to specific homes, we're kind of confined to these geographic regions on our ads, right? So
Yep.
It doesn't make too much sense to expand it, or of course we could play with the budget a little bit, but there's some situations there that we need to be cognizant of. The second, and I cannot believe we haven't talked about this, Gabe, did you read, I think it was Perplexity, another AI company, did you read the story about they had a vending machine and they allowed the vending machine to use their model to set prices, manage inventory, and basically run its own business?
I did read this, yes. And it colossally failed.
It's a super funny story. It talks about, people convinced the model to give them discounts, in some cases free food or, things like that. But again, Phil, it's funny. It's a great experiment. I don't want to like dish on that at all.
No, it's a great experiment.
But again, using, I'm sure there's a prompt in there somewhere to help this thing get going, but it was context. It's aware of the context. It monitored data. Continuous learning and observation was used there as well. So I think that's another great example. But again, for the broadband marketers on the call, or on the podcast, I've been in too many meetings today, Gabe.
You and me both, buddy.
For the broadband marketers, think about Advantage Plus on Meta. I feel like that's an example that it's easy to resonate with. It's something we see almost every day.
Yeah, agreed. I agree. I think that's a good example for how things sit today, and providing that context, like you said, is monitoring that data. It's monitoring how each of those ads are performing. Now, with Advantage Plus, it helps to have a larger data set, right? So, you do have to be investing a fair amount of money there in order for it to, really be able to analyze budgets and things like that. That's why I think, some of these more bespoke options may be interesting, where, you don't need as much data when you're training it on a really specific data set of things like, again, I have this process, my customers or my prospects are going through it. Here's how they're converting or not converting. And then here's specific offers that you can make or changes you can make to that process to improve that conversion.
So let's talk about it. Promptless and contextual aware AI. Let's talk about the business operations side. What's in it for me? Number one here, customer experience, big impact there. One of my favorite words, I already mentioned it, proactive, right?
Indeed.
Resolving customer issues or subscriber issues in the broadband space before you even know there's a problem. Gabe, there's huge opportunity here.
Huge. The one piece that I really think is important, though, as we're talking about this, is if the customer doesn't know there was a problem, you may not necessarily get credit for fixing that problem. So this is where communication becomes really, really important, to be able to say, oh, frankly, I know people get a little bit freaked out by this, of being this transparent, but we saw this problem and we fixed it. And here's the better experience that you are going to get because we solved this problem. And when you have that conversation with operators, a lot of times they get freaked out because they're like, well, we really don't want people to know that we're monitoring this type of behavior and analysis. Okay, fair. But if it's improving the customer experience, the customer is going to be willing to let you do that to provide them that better experience. maybe you have to update some T's and C's and, things like that, right? I'm not a lawyer, but I do think it's really important to communicate those things out that you've done in a proactive way to make sure that you're getting credit for it.
Absolutely. And two more use cases here. I want to just jump to marketing next because it's related to customer experience here, of course. And we mentioned this with Advantage Plus and Meta as well, but AI-driven campaigns that dynamically, man, that's a tough one to say there, adapt over time without that human nudge, right, Gabe? We can see what's working and what's not working and have the AI model continue to adjust our campaign, make that campaign even better. I mentioned Advantage Plus. There's other solutions that do this today, but I think that's a great example in the marketing space.
Agreed. I think it's a perfect example of what we're seeing in the marketing space. Totally agree with that.
And then the last one here, because I know I've got some operations folks that listen to the podcast, that continuous network monitoring. I say network, but this could be any operation within your business, optimizing systems, surfacing trends, and making those decisions in real time. Again, all of this being done without that prompt. And again, a couple of weeks ago, we talked all about prompting 101. Great. Use those prompts today. Use that as a foundation to get started into AI, optimize some of your business processes. Prompting's not going away, but it's going to evolve. And when it does evolve, that's when we're going to enter this promptless era where you can really optimize your business with things like that agent mode and ChatGPT, for example.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Zach. That's a good way to kind of transition into this. It's starting with the prompting piece, and part of this is it's going to, if you're writing better prompts, you're going to have a much better understanding of what's going on with your business. And then once you get to the point where we're moving to more of this promptless structure and agentic structure, you're going to be much more prepared for that future as well, because you have a much better understanding of what's going on in your business. So I do think these things go hand in hand, where it is that on-ramp to the future of what this is going to look like, but it's also going to give you a ton more confidence around what's actually happening in the business as of right now.
Is this one of those like crawl, walk, run corporate sayings?
Totally.
Game?
We're going to synergize to, we need to get like all of the corporate. We'll circle back on it, Zach, at some point in the future and talk about the synergies that we were able to deliver from all of this. Yeah, totally.
Sometimes that corporate jargon like sneaks into my personal life, and I'm like, it's like on severance. Like I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? Who said that? That wasn't me. That was my innie. But summarizing this episode here, Gabe, the future of AI may not require a prompt. It could act as an autonomous actor, participating in workflows, decision-making, and operations with exponential productivity here. But of course, with this, systems of oversight, trust, and human AI collaboration is absolutely going to be necessary as well.
Yeah, that human AI collaboration piece of this is going to be so important, especially just coming off of what we just talked about. It's having that really deep knowledge of your business to be able to provide the prompts and to be able to provide the context for thresholds and analysis that you want AI to start running on a go-forward basis. So that human AI collaboration piece, Zach, is going to be so critical as we move forward.
Absolutely. Well, Gabe, that is everything I had to say on the future of prompting and our kind of AI 2000 level class here. Anything else you'd like to add as we close up?
I just need you to put your glasses back on and like talk about some more Meta Ray-Ban use cases, man. That's the only thing I want.
Oh man. Well, of course, Gabe, I can do that. And of course, thank you everyone for tuning in to Buffering. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast app and to share it with your friends and colleagues. And for more updates, be sure to connect with Gabe and I on LinkedIn.